Hey guys, Dan Pickar here with Eastmans. I just kind of felt like doing a site tip today, or just talk about some sites. It's been a while and there's been a lot of innovation and a lot of new sites that have come out over the years. And as bow hunters, we're very particular about our equipment and especially, our arrow rests and our sights, and the little things are what matter and what kind of dictates whether or not we think a piece of equipment is good or not, maybe, or what we're liking at the time. So just kind of a smattering of different sites that I've used over the years, from black gold to a couple from Dialed, and then of course the Spot Hog here, and then the new hot rod from Ultraview. This came with my Lift X this year. But kind of the first thing that I look for in a site, and it might be different for you, you just kind of have to decide what you like the best. But I just want to go over a few things that stand out to me, that when I look at a site, I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. And so maybe it'll help you when you go to pick a site for your bow, because we all know these things are not cheap anymore. We're talking $500 for a site, so you better choose wisely. So first, I like a small site that doesn't weigh very much. It seems like they've kind of evolved into smaller these days. And then of course, with the bridge lock technology on a Matthews or some other bows, with a Picatinny rail where you can just attach it to the front of the riser. I like that too. You're cutting ounces off the side. You don't need the bracket for the riser mount anymore. And with the sight that just goes into the bridge lock into the riser, it's kind of like an extension of the riser, an extension of the bow, like it truly belongs. So I do like that about these sights. Lightweight. I really like a lightweight sight. That's probably, I don't say if it's number one to me, but I don't like to feel like I have a bunch of weight up top, or a sight that's sticking way out. And I know that with maybe a Spot Hog, you can really get that sight extended out from your bow, and that's going to ultimately make you more accurate, but it's also going to magnify your imperfections in your release and your shot. So another benefit too is with the sight close to your bow, when it's all the way in here like this, when I'm crawling on the ground, I mean, that's in my mind why I like a stabilizer, is it's kind of like a sight protector. When I have my stabilizer down there and I'm sneaking, maybe I'm on my hands and knees or I'm belly crawling. So I know, 2 points of contact on the top of my bow here on the limb pocket and my stabilizer, I know I'm not mashing my sight into the ground. And so that's why I kind of do like a sight that's closer to my bow, even though theoretically it's not as accurate. But I'm not really worried about that. I'm a bow hunter, and I don't feel like that I have an issue with accuracy for bow hunting. So once again, close to my bow. And these things don't weigh anything, just a few ounces. So I like that about them too. Now this last year, I shot this new Dialed Arxos. And these bridge lock sights, super easy. Slide them in your bow. You have a set screw, super easy for travel. And then you can put them back right into where the exact spot that they were. And technically you don't need to check to see if they're on. You can just go hunting. I do like to check my bow if I travel somewhere, take my sight off to make sure it's hitting exactly where it needs to be. But technically it's pretty cool technology. And so that's what I like about bridge lock. Now, some of these sites that you'll see that aren't designed for bridge lock specifically, and this is where we're getting ticky-tacky, because this Arxos, it's not designed specifically for a bridge lock. And what that means is, so your sight is more in closer to your riser, and so I have this windage adjustment that's kind of sticking out, and that tended to really get a beating this last fall. So I don't like my windage post sticking that far out. But you have to have that movement, right? Because if you want to attach it to a riser style bracket, you need that movement to move the mag to the left. So it's just kind of a double-edged sword. But with the proof, so this is the new from this year from Dialed, it's the proof, and I'm doing a hardcore field test on this site. That's going to be in the next issue of EBJ, so check that out as well. But you have a sight that's designed for bridge lock, and you don't have your windage. This is straight out of my bow, sighted in, ready to set up. So you don't have the windage knob that's kind of in the way. So just a tiny, maybe a silly thing that it's just nicer to have not having a piece sticking out that's taking a brunt of the beating. Now with all these sights, the micro adjustability is huge. That's what I look for. You have the little knobs here on your elevation and windage, and that's kind of the status quo, especially you're going to spend $500 on a sight. It's nice to have the micro adjustability, especially on your left and right, your windage, right? Because when you're really tuning in your accuracy in your bow, especially with broadheads, to be able to move your sight a click at a time is very, very handy. So the next thing that I'm really picky about too is ergonomics, and how easy is it for me to grab that dial and move it on the fly without, especially with a glove on, but where I'm not like fumbling around and my fingers aren't too tight in there. And you can see, with this black gold, and this is not a bash on the black gold or the dial, that's just how they're designed. But once again, this windage is it's in the way to the knob, when it's set up for bridge lock, when it's going in like that, because your mag is so far out. And so that kind of gets in the way of that. And it's one of those things, I just don't like it. And so that's the beautiful thing about the gear that we have to our disposal these days, is we can nitpick like this. And so, these two sights, once again, more designed for the bridge lock style, but this Ultra View is really nice in the regards that there's nothing that's like hindering my ability to grab the wheel and turn this very easily. It has a nice rubber grip on it, and the gearing is super smooth, and it has this nice lock on top, and it holds it really tight. So I really like that. So these sights that are designed specifically for bridge lock, they're, in my opinion, ergonomically superior than any other sight that's not specifically designed for bridge lock. I do like my wheels, and so here's another thing. I never really was a fan of having my sight tape like on a round wheel. And the reasoning is because I just didn't feel as precise with it on a round wheel. I like the precision of a flat tape and this really fine needle that I could dial it to 56 yards and just feel like I was incredibly precise with my dial. And maybe that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but in my mind, if I feel like I have that ability to be that precise at the range, that's going to carry over to confidence bow hunting in the field and make me think I'm even more accurate because I feel that much more precise. So something like this that maybe logically doesn't matter, it may subconsciously matter to one person more than the next person, but that's just something that stands out to me. And it's pretty cool because dialed, not that they did this for me, I don't believe that they did, but I told them, I was like, with wheeled sights, with sight tapes, I don't really like, because you have to be at the right angle and you have the wheel and the dial indicators, I don't feel like I'm precise enough. So they made this really cool system here on this dialed proof, and it's a sliding ring set, and you have this nice sharp point. And so I feel like I can be very precise with my sight tape on a wheel. And once again, ultimately the confidence that I'm precise, that's what matters more than the actual function. You want the function, but the function also gives you that mental confidence that you're absolutely precise. So while I do technically prefer a sight tape on a nice flat surface with a nice fine needle like Ultra View, they nailed it in my opinion for having a flat sight tape. It's awesome, but on a wheel just makes more sense because it's right there ergonomically with your dial. And so, having, a mover sight with a dial, it makes sense, right? Just functionality. And so that's ultimately what I like about a wheeled sight, and the sight tape on a wheel is just the functionality behind it. But I thought Dial did a good job with the precision of how adjustable these yardage marker pins really are. So another thing that really stood out to me, which is you wouldn't really think about, but when I was shooting this dialed Arxos last year, and this is the first sight that they came out with, but the pin. So I'm a vertical pin guy, and we can go into that here in a few minutes, but you have a vertical pin, and this pin is heavily bladed. It's a long blade, and we'll get a close up here. But what that long blade gives me is, and the longer the blade, the better, and I mean from front to back of the actual sight, but I can see if my third axis may be off just a little bit at full draw. And so your third axis not being perfect, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be an accurate shot, but it's pleasing to the eye, and it's nice to know that when you're looking through your mag and you're looking at that pin, that you're looking at that pin perfectly square. And so once again, it's maybe a little thing that might seem silly, but it does give you a bit more of confidence. And you know, like, it's not as pronounced on the Proof this year. And then of course on this Ultra View, you know, this is a horizontal pin sight, so it's not quite as pronounced. And with a horizontal pin, you're not really going to be able to see the effects of third axis as much because they're horizontal compared to a vertical pin that's going to really show you whether or not your third axis is off or not. And you know, while I do appreciate a sleeker pin of the black gold, you don't have that pronounced, you know, blade to show you if your third axis is perfect. But once again, these are things that you just have to decide if it's worth it for you or not to nitpick. Lastly, so yeah, I'm a vertical pin guy. I like having my shooter pin in the middle of my housing, in the middle of my mag. And when I'm looking through my peep, that lines up with my housing, and then my pin is dead center in the middle of my housing. I just feel, for me, that's gonna allow me to be more accurate. Everything's center, center of center. It lines up naturally. You don't have to think about it. So that's super important. But that's why it's one of the reasons I've gravitated away from horizontal pins. Now you can see with horizontal pins, you have your sight picture clutter, which I don't like. Just my personal preference. The reason I switch from horizontal pins to one vertical pin, or in this case now, we're spoiled. We have 2 and 3 vertical pins, which can come in handy as well. But I used to have a strong amount of astigmatism, so I'd get this pin blur and like a starburst, and I just never really was perfectly focused. So having a single pin, I felt like I was more precise. I felt like I was more accurate and center, center of center. So I just felt like it was a better setup. So that's initially why I changed from a horizontal pin to a vertical pin. There's a few hurdles that come along with that as far as your yardage and how your mind works and how you compensate for, you know, maybe just because your sight is set at 30, but you don't have time to adjust your sight, then you consciously have to think to hold low or think high, use a little Kentucky windage in the heat of the moment, which that's a lot of thinking in the heat of the moment, which in my opinion, you don't need to be paying attention to that stuff when it comes down to it, because with all these stacked pins, you don't have to really think. You just say, okay, 20, 30, 40, 50, you know, the bull's close, the buck's close, top pin all day long. But what if you're stuck with your sight set at 30 and the buck or bull ends up at 15 yards? You have to consciously make yourself hold low. And while it's just a couple inches, it can make a difference, especially on smaller animals. And so I got used to the mindset of the vertical pin and using that Kentucky windage during the heat of the moment. So that's the main reasons there why I switched to a vertical pin. We're gonna wrap this up lastly by the brightness of your fiber optic. And so a lot of these companies, you know, with a spot hog, you have, you know, a shield here and then like a bit of some tubing around your fiber optic to kind of give it, you know, that dim effect. And then, you know, you have black gold, which has their patented plastic. You know, it's like a transition sunglass lens. When the sun hits this plastic, it darkens it, and that allows less light penetrating into your fiber optic, and then your pin isn't so bright. And over the last couple of years, I've kind of, you know, enjoyed the manual motion of allowing light into my fiber optics. So you have the shade on the top of these dialed sights. And so this is important to me too, because if your pin's too bright, it'll like really be blasting. And I've had LASIK surgery done, but it's not completely corrected with the starburst, and it's probably something that's just never going to be corrected. So a pin that's too bright is like too much, and a pin that's too dark, obviously, you can't see very well, especially in low light. So it's nice to have a manual shade for me, because I can have it completely blocked on those really bright sunny days, and then the cloudy days or at low light, first thing in the morning, last light, I have it wide open, and that allows me to have maximum sun, maximum light coming in to my pin. And then, maybe I'll throw it on half shade if I want to, based on the situation. But that's one thing I do look at, especially when I get to, shooting 50, 60, 70 yards. You want your pin brightness to be absolutely dialed so you have that precision. So hopefully, with all these sights, just kind of the little things that I look for, maybe it'll help you decide what sight is right for you. Go down to your pro shop, mess with them a little bit. It's a big investment. I mean, these things are expensive nowadays. And it does seem like, in the sight world, just like in the optics world maybe, or the footwear world, you do get what you pay for. And so maybe cry once, buy once, cry once. Is that how it works? Yeah, buy once, cry once. And, lifetime guarantee. So you really are getting what you're paying for. So thanks for checking out this gear video on sights. We're going to be doing some more here in the future. And make sure you check out Beyond the Grid and subscribe to our channel. Leave me a comment. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe what's the smallest thing that you look for in a sight that I didn't mention, or that maybe most people won't key in on. I love hearing what you guys have to say too. So thanks for watching.